Hello everyone, thank you very much for still staying here. I know it's been a long afternoon. One session before your break, and then we've got Brian, so I see myself as the undercard. But thank you very much for being here. The first question that I want to pose to you is to understand who you are as the audience. So who supports Manchester United here? Arsenal? Liverpool? The exit's that way. Right. Thank you for being here today. To truly mitigate risk, I know we've only got 15 minutes for today's session, and I'll just reset my timer here as well. To truly mitigate risk, we need to rethink our approach to security awareness. Security awareness needs to do more, and to do more, we need to re-envisage it. My name's Saiyid. I'm a senior manager for sales engineering department at Mimecast. I'm here to talk to you today about how we can re-envision security awareness. Before I do, I want to pose you a few more questions, okay? To consider whilst we're having this time together. Are your awareness training programs truly reducing risk to the extent you hope they are? Are people being measured on internal phishing campaigns, and does that actually relate to real-world risk? And how would you change your programs if you knew who your top 10 riskiest users were? I imagine these are not very easy questions to answer, but they're very worthwhile to think about. And I'm hoping I can share some information today that will improve your perspective on this topic. Now, you may be familiar with the term security awareness. And this term of human risk management is a new one that's attracting a lot of attention, and let's discuss this. Let's all make sure we're all on the same page and outline the problem first. If you've been in security for any time at all, you're most likely well aware of the human element. The people of our organizations are one of the most vulnerable parts of our defense systems. And it has the opportunity to be the strongest. It's the way threat actors regularly get into our organizations and launch their attacks through our users. In fact, according to Verizon data breach, 68% of breaches involved the human element. So the question is, how and why is it so high? And why do we struggle to drive the results in one of the areas that it's needed the most, despite extensive investments in end-user security awareness and training? To answer that, we need to look at how, as an industry, we've tried to resolve this. We have to look at and we often look at this through simulated risk. Why are we trying to measure how risky our people are using metrics such as training completion and a response to simulated phishing? And this is typically where most organizations will tend to stop. Looking at employee A, Tim, who does a great job when it comes to his simulated environments, we may say that he's got a low level of risk and we don't need to worry about him too much. Whereas employee B, Sarah here, regularly clicks on simulated phishing attacks and sporadically completes awareness training modules. So actually, we might think maybe risk resides here. The problem is simulated environments are not an accurate representation of the real risk that we're trying to protect our organizations from. We need to expand the lens through which we're looking at this issue. And, and what we see is that a few more factors we need to be considering to effectively understand how risky our employees are, to reflect the human attack surface that we need to defend. We need to ask ourselves, do they understand how to handle sensitive data? Are they downloading attachments, for example? Are they interacting with business email compromised emails? And do they have a good security sense? Are they reporting potential risks to your IT environments or departments? You can start to see that this starts to paint a picture of the end result that we're trying to get to. There's an opportunity here to create much more thoughtful measurements of human risk. So how do we do that? Well, we need to accurately identify sources of human risk. And this requires more complete picture of each individual and their context within their organizations. And we can do this by leveraging real security signals and behavioral insights. whether that's monitoring their actions, which employees click through dangerous content, who's sharing information more broadly, maybe to people that they shouldn't be, who is exhibiting good cybersecurity and practices, reporting risks and engaging in the training that's been provided. Has their risk shifted due to some other factor? Maybe it's a sentiment change. Maybe they've handed in their notice. We need to understand the attacks. Who is actively being attacked within the organization? What is the intended impact of that attack? Is it ransomware? Is it data theft? Account takeover, maybe? What methods are being deployed? Are the attackers trying to go through email, credential phishing, data theft, or even social engineering? And lastly, we need to consider the access. What level of access does that individual have? What type of attack could exploit that access? What would the impact of exploit be here? With this information, we have a foundation to re-envision security awareness. I mentioned human risk management at the start of the session, and the first part of this is improving our abilities to meaningfully create visibility into how risky our employees are. So if we look at Josie on screen now, there are 3 factors that we need to consider to be able to pull together a view of how risky she is at any given point in time. First, it's her actions and her security behaviors. What kind of good and bad security decisions does she make on a regular basis? Next, it's the attacks or adversary tactics. Not everyone is attacked at the same frequency. So how frequently is Josie being attacked? Finally, Josie's access, typically defined by her role. What is the blast radius if Josie were to make a risky security decision? How wide would the impact be? All of these data points can be obtained from security solutions that you already have in your organizations today. Mimecast and our email solution included. But with a much broader lens, you can start to see other technologies that can help us paint a better picture of what decisions users are making. This allows us to create an insightful scorecard for every person based on the kind of risks they are posing to your organization. Their overall risk, how resilient they are to actual phishing, what their browsing habits are, and so on. With this visibility, you can easily describe which users are risky and in which ways they are risky. Let me give you a little sneak peek into what you may find if you do start to take this approach. So, 8% of your employees will cause about 80% of security incidents. If we take a look at these numbers by behavior, we start to see a small number of employees cause a disproportionate large number of incidents across behaviors, whether that's phishing, malware, data handling. When we take a closer look at the problem, we see that it's made even more complicated by the distribution of these human risks across the organization. And if we're looking only at occasional simulated phish to tell us who's risky and who's not, well, we're going to have a very one-dimensional view. We view this as a slide of opportunity. If we understand who our top 10% of riskiest people are, we can understand how best to support these individuals in a way that they need. But we also see certain employees are attacked more frequently than others. In fact, managers are nearly 2 times more targeted than individual contributors. And when we compare the inbox of a manager and an individual contributor, we can see that managers will be targeted 2.5 times more with phishing emails. And third is the tenure. Depending on how long you've been with an organization, the more likely you are to receive more phishing attacks. So risk is not distributed evenly across your workforce. Certain people make riskier decisions. Certain people are just getting attacked more often. So because risk isn't distributed evenly, we have this, opportunity to start adapting our protection appropriately to that level of risk. If we have a set of employees who rank from low to high, we can think about how we support these individuals in a much more effective way, knowing how and why they are risky, or exactly the opposite, understanding why they're top performers, why they are security champions and how we can support them too. If 8% of employees cause 80% of incidents, let's think about the other 92% of our users who are making the right decisions, handling things well, and support and recognize those individuals too. On the left-hand side here, we have Josie, who has a low risk score. You can think about giving her light touch training and maybe baseline security controls across the board. Whereas on the right-hand side, we've got Marco, and unfortunately, he's a higher risk due to maybe repeat offenses, maybe highly attacked, and so therefore we might give him more targeted training, more regular feedback, and bubble wrap him a little bit more effectively with security controls so that we can have a safety net around him and his decision making, essentially. All of these are exciting ways of revolutionizing how we think about this space. So far, we have talked about understanding individual risk and alluded to adaptive protection. But now let's see how we can actually piece together this in the Mimecast platform. Back to Josie. And we already understand how there are 3 factors associated how we can map her risk. Her behaviors in terms of her security actions, how often she's attacked, and also the access that she has within the organization with her role. I spoke about how ingesting this data from security technologies outside of Mimecast, that we have to create a much broader picture of human risk, not just from the Mimecast ecosystem. And this will give us an up-to-date view of the risk of her in any point in time. So what? Well, we don't stop there. Once you understand the risk for this individual is distributed, it changes how we engage with the workforce. We think of this in 4 separate buckets of possible interventions. First, you've got your adapting to the right training, to the right person, at the right time, providing feedback and alerts to that individual. Secondly, visibility, where we can show trends to your organization, who's risky, who's not, who's improving, who's getting worse, maybe, and share a user risk score, a bit like a credit score, to that individual. Hands up if you've ever accessed your own credit report scores. Probably most of you, right? Imagine a world where you can have your own risk score and you had tips to improve this. And thirdly, we look to implement policies appropriately to individuals based on the risk they pose. Again, automated responses and policies based on where that risk lies. And finally, it doesn't need to stop at the Mimecast ecosystem. Think about all the other technologies and controls that would benefit from this type of information. Think about your identity access management and others. When we pull this all together, there are 3 main pillars. You've got, by understanding the risk level of your employees, we can provide visibility into their riskiest users that you have within your organization. Who are the repeat offenders and who are the riskiest groups? Maybe it's a specific department, but also who are the security champions? Who's doing a great job at setting an example? The Human Risk Dashboard helps security teams uncover the greatest source of human risk, that 8%. It enhances protection for employees that need it the most. Its components consist of the main dashboard itself, as you can see here, individual risk profiles, a risk response engine, and risk analysis page. Moving on to our second pillar, how do we spark real change in behavior? Through tailored training and personal nudges. I know we're about to get kicked off any moment now. So we can deploy automated real-time responses based on individual actions, both to motivate behavioral change as well as adjust and course-correct risky decisions. We've got behavioral nudges to offer positive reinforcement, correction, and employee engagement. They can be text-only or video-based, featuring 20 to 40-second micro modules. Mimecast offers an extensive content library to cover critical security topics to support your compliance requirements, but also each module is highly entertaining, packed with humor, lightheartedness, striking a balance of memorable and informative. And finally, resetting your team's focus. We know your team's time is valuable. With powerful automation, Mimecast Engage redirects your attention to real risk reduction, gets you out of the business of managing cumbersome training and simulation tools. Who wouldn't want that? And Mimecast can deploy in minutes with the help of interactive first-time setup experiences. This is the connected human risk management platform. So think about if your user awareness training program today is truly reducing the risks in your organization. Think about simulated risks don't always translate to real-world risks. And think about how you would change the way you go about risk management if you were to use some of the ideas that we've discussed today. Thank you.